Okay. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We had a little break because last week we didn't meet. So you may recall, we're looking at how to have an evangelistic conversation, and we're using kind of the steps that are provided by the evangelism director of the Central Illinois District, Dr. Ken Scherb. So you got to see so far 2 videos. Well, you didn't see the videos, you just heard the audios, 2 audios of him. And so the first 2 sessions that we had, you got to see hear his audio, and then you practiced learning how to get started in a conversation. We practiced that with each other. And I had lots of people said, "Oh, I really liked Sunday school that day. That was a lot of fun." And I'm thinking, yeah, because I didn't say anything. So we're going to do that again today. So our third session we had was then listening to Dr. Scherb talking about how to listen carefully to a person. So the approach to an evangelistic conversation that we're learning in this course is, you could say it's not, I hate to use the word, but it's not a canned approach. So many years ago, I learned I went through a class at a Lutheran church, in fact, where we went through the 4 spiritual laws. And you had a little book. And we went knocking on doors. We went to people's houses. And we were taught how to kind of like hold up the little book for them and go through page by page and go through the 4 spiritual laws. Was that a good program? Yeah, I think so. Who knows how many people will be in heaven because of that. And then years later, when I was in seminary, I also was able to go down to learn the Evangelism Explosion program. That was by James D. Kennedy, and that took a week. That was no 1-hour seminar. I was there for a week, because that's actually quite detailed. There's a lot to it. And there again, you're kind of following a program. So there's certain questions that you're taught to ask, and then there's certain things that you present next, and certain things you present after that. And so it's longer and it's more detailed. But once again, you learn kind of a program. Do this, then do this, then do this. And so is that a good thing? Absolutely. I still love that program to this day. And although I don't follow it exactly the way I was trained, I still employ like the 2 diagnostic questions, if you've heard of those. There's a lot of good stuff. But the approach we're learning here from Dr. Scherb is designed not to be a canned approach. So you get a phone call or somebody comes to the door and, "Hello, they're calling for Terrence Oswald." "No, there's no Terrence here. This is Tim Oswald." "Yes, Mr. Oswald. Thank you for answering. How are you today?" I say, "I'm fine. How are you?" "Oh, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Thank you for asking." And they start in their spiel, right? And you can't even, I'm like wrestling. Do I stop them now to tell them, "No, I don't want solar roof, and I don't want bug spray for ants, and I don't want I don't want to give, my donation. I already give probably 10 times more to charity than you do, and I'm not going to give $100. No, how about $50? Well, how about $20? How about $5? No. Right? I mean, don't you hate that? So this is a really neat method because it's designed to follow the lead of the person, kind of sense where they are and go from there and see what the Lord opens up. And but the challenge of that is, in some ways it's kind of harder to learn it, right? Wouldn't it be easier if I told you say this and then say this? And that would be easier. It doesn't quite work that way. So the first session you had where you interacted with each other, in some ways that was easier because we tried 3 different methods, Ask the person if they've been baptized, ask them if they grew up in a church, non-threatening questions that they can talk about, and you're not putting them on the spot, right? And so that was very good. Today it gets even a little more difficult because I just don't know that I can tell you exactly how to do this. But what we're going to focus on today is listening. Not giving the canned approach, saying this and then saying that, but learning to listen and hear the heart of the person with whom you're conversing and understand them. And that will guide you in the way, what the openings are for how to perhaps plant seeds of the gospel. So if you have the handout there that says listen discerningly to non-church people, let me just go through the first page with you there. First, some preliminaries. Don't overlook listening. So apparently they did a survey of pastors in Central Illinois District a few years ago. And they discovered that people are not being taught how to listen. We're told what to say, but we're not taught how to really hear and listen to the other person. Number two, unsurprisingly, listening goes hand in hand with asking. So we've been taught already some questions, right? Good questions, not, for example, questions that can be answered in one or two words, set the stage for good listening. So you want to get the person talking about themselves and see what you learned from them by that. Also, questions are typically not as threatening as outright statements can be. Of course, questions can be used in a pressuring or threatening way, so you avoid that. So you can use questions too in ways that pigeonhole people or put them on the defensive, and that's not what we want to do. Good questions invite further conversation instead of curtailing it. Employs the first 2 points from the Everyone is Witness. Everyone is Witness is kind of the synod evangelism program that's being emphasized now. It's a much longer than what we're doing here in Sunday school. But they have an acronym LASSE, and the first two parts of that, LA, stand for listen and ask. Listen and ask work together back and forth. Ask so you can listen. Having listened, you're positioned to ask more probing questions. 3, sometimes non-church people will ask you about God or Christ or faith. Especially if you do not know the person well, consider responding with a question. So Dr. Robert Cole suggests one here. Why do you want to know? For example, if someone says, do you think that people have to be baptized, to be saved? You can ask, why do you want to know? The answer you get will help you to listen and speak still more discerningly. Now, I can't say that I've used this a lot, but it just strikes me that you could even tweak this a little bit. If I asked a question and somebody said, why do you want to know? I'd be like, oh, that's kind of standoffish, right?
Right.
I almost think you could phrase that like, oh, why are you interested in that? Or what makes you curious about that? Something that is less standoffish, but has the same impact to get the person talking about their question. So below are 3 encouragements, A, B, and C. So we're definitely going to try A here, and if you finish in time, we'll maybe try B and or C. The point is, each of them stands independent of the others. So perhaps you will encounter a situation in which you can use more than one of these 3 suggestions. However, please bear in mind that they're not listed here with the intention that you'll utilize the second one only after using the first one. So these are not, do step A, then step B, then step C. These are 3 different options for how to engage the person in a way that allows you to start listening to what they're telling you. So A here is active listening. How many of you have heard that expression before? Active listening. Yeah, that came into vogue in the late 60s and 70s through programs like parent effectiveness training. I was trained when I was in the Navy in the speaker-listener technique for marriage counseling, and the neat thing about it is it's done by psychologists and researchers. So it's not like somebody wrote a book And no, let me tell you all the great stuff that's in my book. They actually did research on this, and they found that couples that use the speaker-listener technique, the rewards for it are so much better. They feel closer in their marriage. They feel more understood by their spouse. They have fewer fights and arguments. They're much more likely to have a successful marriage. So it's a really good technique, and it really does work. But it can be applied not just between husbands and wives, but in all kinds of settings. So active listening is careful listening, attentive to both verbal and nonverbal messages. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I didn't remember to mention that, but if you're talking to the person and they're like this, what is that telling you? Yeah, they're not. But if they start leaning toward you, or coming into you a little bit, they're engaged. You're doing good. Keep up the good work, right? It also keeps in mind what is not being said. Active listener, so this is part of the active listening technique, is to offer feedback to a person who speaks. Such feedback may paraphrase or summarize what was just said, or perhaps pose a question to clarify it. So this is what you're going to be practicing. As you're in their conversation with somebody, I want you to try offering feedback that allows that person to, it encourages them to share more. You're not saying, oh, that's it, I used to think that, or my mother used to tell me that, or something. No. You're offering feedback that paraphrases what they're saying so that they can say, yes, that's what I mean, or no, that's not quite what I mean. Or you can ask a question that allows them to dig into it a little further. So suppose two people, A and B, are conversing. Person A says something, then B provides feedback to A, reflecting what A just said. That is, B plays it back for A. This gives B an opportunity to verify his or her understanding of what A said. If B's understanding seems inaccurate, A can set things straight on the spot. B can also actively listen to check emotions or assumptions behind A's bare words. So active listening, it can be subject to parody. So if you've been through active listening courses or techniques, people do make fun of it, right? So someone says, oh, it's a beautiful day outside. And so B says, oh, I hear you saying that it's a beautiful day outside. Right? That's kind of lame that is. Yeah. But technically, that is the way that this sort of works. So because I have so much experience with this in marriage things, so you've got the wife wants Alicia, their 16-year-old, to get her license, and the dad doesn't think Alicia is responsible enough yet to drive and get a license, and they're having an argument, right? So the wise dad says, well, tell me more about why you think Alicia should be driving. So now instead of the dad saying, I don't think she's responsible and I don't think she could have a license, right? Now the wife has a chance to say, because I'm really tired and I'm having to drive and pick her up from school and take her to cheerleading, and then the dad says, well, I know that's really hard for you and that's tough, but you know what, she's not responsible. No, that's wrong, right? He says, oh, so what I hear is that her having her license would really help you out because you're having to take her so many places. And then mom could say, no, I'm not saying I don't want to ever take her any place. It's just too much for me. Oh, it's so you don't have to take her everywhere, but see how that goes back and forth and allows clarification without getting into an argument right away, because one side is telling, and that's usually what we do when we talk, right? We're not listening to what the other person tells us. We're thinking what we're going to say as soon as they shut their pile for 1 second. Right? So active listening is just trying to be very careful to listen back and not think what you're going to say, but to ask questions that invite more of that conversation or take it a little deeper or a little further. All right, so this is what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you split up again into groups of 2, not with your spouse, please. Please find somebody else besides your spouse. And you can take turns at this. One go first and the other one go second. So the one who goes first
We made it to our 50th
is
anniversary.
the non-Christian. And so I want the person who's the Christian to ask the non-Christian a question. Maybe you want to draw on what we did the first time we did this, like say, oh, I'm a member of a church. Did you grow up in a church? Or I'm baptized? Or I've got this. I'm wearing this cross. That's I've always liked the cross, or something that just gets the other person to make a statement, and listen to their statement, and then follow up on it by either paraphrasing it, like, so it sounds like you don't really like crosses because your father died driving into a cross. Well, but paraphrase back or ask questions and see how much you can extract from them. So remember, you're not making statements yourself. You're not steering the conversation. You're trying to allow them to lead the conversation. Do not yet start sharing the gospel. We're going to learn that next time. But this is not time to say, I love the cross because that's where Jesus died. Great, I'm glad you're thinking that way. But you're ahead of us. Don't do that yet today. So today it's just a chance to let that person. And so I want to see how far you can get in drawing out conversation from the other person and listening. So we'll do that for a few minutes, and then I'll have you switch, and the other person can try it. Some of you will be really good at this. Some of you, this is hard for me. I'm an introvert. I'm not natural at this. You have to really work at it. But I want you to give your best and do your best just practicing, okay? Active listening. All right, please split up. Find the person you're going to work with.
Split up already.